Psalm 104. We don't have any title or any information about the writer, so we'll just begin in verse 1. It says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, who covereth thyself with light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire, who laid the foundations of the earth that it should not be removed forever. Thou coveredst it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. They go up by the mountains. They go down by the valleys unto the place which thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. He sendeth the springs into the valleys, which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth. And wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart. The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon, which he hath planted, where the birds make their nests. As for the stork, the fir trees are her house. The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies. He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knoweth his going down. Thou makest darkness, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The young lions roar after their prey, and seek their meat from God. The sun ariseth, they gather themselves together, and lay them down in their dens. Man goeth forth unto his work and to his labor until the evening. O Lord, how manifold are thy works! In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches. So is this great and wide sea, wherein are things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. These wait all upon thee, that thou mayest give them their meat in due season. That thou givest them, they gather. Thou openest thine hand, they are filled with good. Thou hidest thy face, they are troubled. Thou takest away their breath, they die, and return into their dust. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, they are created, and thou renewest the face of the earth. The glory of the Lord shall endure forever. The Lord shall rejoice in his works. He looketh on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. I will sing unto the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. My meditation of him shall be sweet. I will be glad in the Lord. Let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, and let the wicked be no more. Bless thou the Lord, O my soul. Praise ye the Lord. So, like Psalm 103 before it, Psalm 104 is a psalm of praise, a recognition of the glory and the majesty of God, and reference to his creation. And so we'll go back to verse 1. It says, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, O Lord my God. Thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, who coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who stretcheth out the heavens like a curtain." And so again here in this psalm, we have a reference to clothing and to a garment. And so we did this last time, but we're going to turn to Hebrews again, Hebrews chapter 1. And we're just going to cover this again very quickly. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 10 through 12. Hebrews 1, 10 through 12. It says, "And thou, Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thine hands. They shall perish, but thou remainest, and they shall wax old as doth a garment. And as a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed, but thou art the same, and thy years shall not fail." And so that is almost a direct quote from the previous psalm, Psalm 103, that the Hebrew writer makes here. And it brings forward this tradition that exists within Judaism of the universe or creation in general being the clothing of God, that he clothes himself with the universe, and that we see him, but only as through a glass darkly. We don't get to see him in his entirety. We cannot handle his full glory, his full majesty with our frame that he's given us. It is unable to behold his true glory. And so we see little bits of that glory shining through creation, like creation is a screen. And we can see some, but we can't see all. And so he shows us his glory, and he demonstrates that through creation and clothes himself with creation. And as we see, though, in Hebrews, it says, "And as a vesture shalt thou fold them up, and they shall be changed." And we know it to be true that Peter says that the earth will be one day burned, and we know there will be a new heaven and a new earth. And so those garments will be changed. And at that time, in the eternal kingdom, we will have glorified bodies. And I believe that our frame that's provided to us won't be a frame of dust, as was mentioned in Psalm 103, but it will be a pure frame, a perfect frame provided by God that can withstand and behold him, that he will draw us unto himself, that we will be fully reconciled to him because of the blood of Christ, because of his salvation, that we're able to not have to be separated from God, but that we can dwell with him. So that's an idea here that we get from the first couple verses. And then and we're not going to cover them in great detail. We're just going to touch on a few verses here and there. But basically from verses 3 to verse 23, and then even further after verse 24, we still see that this is basically an exclamation of God's glory through his creation, and a somewhat detailed depiction of how each of these pieces of creation in turn serves and works together to glorify God. And so we start with verse 3. It says, "Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind." And so we have here a representation and a glorification of God as the original creator. He's the one who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters. Verse 4 says, "Who maketh his angels spirits, his ministers a flaming fire." And so we see this again in Hebrews chapter 1. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. It says, "And again, when he bringeth in the first begotten into the world, he saith, And let all the angels of God worship him. And of the angels he saith, Who maketh his angels spirits, and his ministers a flame of fire." And so this is these two verses, and verse 7 specifically references this verse back in Psalm 104. But this is in the greater context of the superiority or the preeminence of Jesus over the angels, that Jesus is the Son of God, that he is God, he is the second member of the Trinity, and the angels are subject to him. They are not equal to him, they are not above him, they are below. Verse 5, back in Psalm 104, "Who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Thou coveredst it with the deep as with a garment, the waters stood above the mountains." And so from verses 6 and onward, we see that this is really specifically talking about the water of the earth. And so we'll go through this very quickly. In verse 6, it says, "The waters stood above the mountains." And so you can go all the way back to, and we're not going to go read it this morning, but you can go back to Genesis 1, and you can read that the earth was without form, and it was void, and the Spirit moved upon the face of the deep. And so the Holy Spirit moves over the face of the deep. The earth has no form. There's no continents. It's just a ball of rock and water, and the water covers everything. And we know that also is a picture of the earth during the flood, because the flood covered everything. So the waters stood above the mountains. Now in verse 7, at thy rebuke they fled, at the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. They go up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys into the place which thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. And so I believe that we see here, most of this is a reference to creation, when God divided the land from the water. But then we see verse 9, thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. And God set that bound, not during creation, but roughly 2,000 years after creation. He set that bound, and he sealed that bound with a specific symbol of a promise. And that symbol was a rainbow. That's what he showed to Noah and his family. And he made the promise that the earth would no longer again be entirely destroyed by a flood of water. Now, we did mention earlier that the earth will be destroyed again, but the next time it's destroyed, it won't be by water, it will be by fire. Verse 10, he sendeth the springs into the valleys which run among the hills. They give drink to every beast of the field. The wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. He watereth the hills from his chambers. The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works. And so just recognition and glorification of God for how he uses this water, which can be and has been extremely destructive and can still be destructive today. We've seen video of floods, of tsunamis, of hurricanes, of these great natural disasters that occur, that water, this thing that comprises 75% of the globe, it comprises over 70% of our own bodies, your own organs. They're made up primarily of water and carbon. And so, this thing that we need so badly, that we require so desperately to sustain ourselves and to provide us with life, is also something that has the potential to completely end our life. That water is something we need, but it's something we can't have too much of. And so this is a picture of the right amount. This is a picture of God providing what's needed. That we see here, he sendeth the springs into the valleys which run among the hills. A beautiful picture of how God provides for his creation. They give drink to the beast of the field, the wild asses quench their thirst. By them shall the fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. And so, you see that there's often a place where people, or where animals for that matter, gather. The phrase, the watering hole, comes to mind. It's a place of gathering for animals. If you have a job with a water cooler stationed somewhere in your office or on the job site, the water cooler is often a place of gathering. It's a place of conversation. It's a place of fellowship. Now, whether that fellowship be good or bad, I can't say, but regardless, the water cooler is a place where people come together. And so, when we see this here, this is showing us how God uses this to bring his creation together. The fowls of the heaven have their habitation, which sing among the branches. And so where you have water, you typically have some kind of vegetation, some kind of life. When you have that kind of plant life, that draws in types of animal life. And so everything works together here in harmony. as God designed it. We see in verse 13 it says, "The earth is satisfied with the fruit of thy works." Now, verse 14 says, "He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth." And so again, it all works together. And I said that where you have the water, typically you'll have the vegetation, and then you'll have the animal life, and then where you have vegetation and animal life that's able to sustain for people, you'll have people. And so people, more often than not, don't live in desert areas. Some people do choose to live in desert areas. They choose to live a nomadic lifestyle. But more often than not, people don't just decide, okay, let's find the most prime, optimal place to grow a family, to grow a nation. Most people don't choose the desert. Most people choose the place that's flourishing with life. And so it says that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face to shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart. And so we have sustenance. We have the things that help to make ourselves clean or presentable. We gather the things that we need from the creation that God has provided for us. It says in verse 16, "The trees of the Lord are full of sap, the cedars of Lebanon which he hath planted, where the birds make their nests. As for the stork, the fir trees are her house." And so just showing how the different types of trees, the different types of animals choose to live in different types of places. Verse 18, "The high hills are a refuge for the wild goats, and the rocks for the conies. He appointed the moon for seasons, the sun knoweth his going down." And so here in verse 19, we have a reference to the celestial bodies that we're familiar with, the sun and the moon. And so the moon, the way that it behaves and the way that it has a relationship with the sun is extremely important. Extremely important for how people have lived and how we've done things throughout all of history. The word month is that M-O-N in the word month comes from moon, because the month comes from people's observations of the different cycles of the moon. And so if you actually look at the Jewish calendar, or you look at other ancient calendars, other than the Julian or the Gregorian calendar, which is, that's basically what we go by today with our 365 days, and then the correction for each quarter day that also occurs with a full day every fourth year, known as leap day in leap year. If you contrast that and compare that to a Jewish calendar, or even an Islamic calendar, or other ancient calendars that existed, other Eastern calendars from Asia, people used the moon and its cycles as a recognition of the month. And so our months don't exactly overlap with the moon cycles. There is a relationship there, but does anybody know how long the cycle of the moon lasts? It's 28 days. 28 days. And so we have 30 and 31 day months, and then you have February, that's the odd one out, where it's 28, and then every 4 years it's 29 to even everything out. But the way that the moon works and the way that its cycle works is something that is very important to how we have measured time and how we know what part of the year we're in, and how we know, that's important because that allows us to be able to measure the seasons. It allows us and able to measure and make plans for things that are going to occur, so because we've recognized these patterns over time. And why is that important? Well, because if you know how many months you have in order to plant crops, and you know how many months you have in order to let those crops grow, in order to let those crops harvest, that allows you to be able to make plans in order to secure food. And then if you know that there's a time period where you won't be able to produce that kind of food, you know that you need to use the time wisely to store up the food. Now that hasn't been as important for us in the United States with, especially in the past few, several decades. I won't say few, I'll say several, with the advent of global shipping and supermarkets where you can get coffee, you can get a red pepper, you can get bananas any time of year, all year round, because it can be harvested from somewhere else on the planet that's able to grow those things and then sent anywhere around the world. We have that logistical capability now. That didn't always exist. For somebody to think 120 years ago, for somebody to have a banana in January, it just didn't happen. It didn't happen. Tangerines in February? Oh no. So God has blessed us with the ability to be able to expand these things and to add that to our capabilities, but this is something that's relatively new. And so for most of human history, people had to rely upon measuring time with the moon, with the sun, with the stars, in order to be able to make these plans. Now, verse 20 says, "Thou makest darkness, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The young lions roar after their prey, and seek their meat from God." And so again, this is a picture of how all of creation depends on God. All of creation depends on God. Now you say, oh, well, how is the lion getting his meat from God? He's not going to bow his head and get on his paws and prostrate himself and say a prayer. No, he's not going to do that. He's going to go out. He's going to kill whatever he needs to kill. He's going to drag it in and eat it. And so this isn't that God is answering a prayer of the lion, but it is that God has created this system and holds it intact and allows blatant plagiarism from the Lion King, allows the circle of life to continue. That he has set that in play, and he allows it to keep going around and around and around. And so, while God may not necessarily, turn the lion this way and turn the lion that way and set him going in this direction or set him going in that direction to find whatever gazelle he's trying to grab. God has created the gazelle. He's given the lion the hunter instincts, the senses, the smell, the muscle twitch to be able to achieve top speed quickly enough, the paw pads to be able to remain silent as it stalks. God has provided the lion with all of those things, just as God has provided me and you, hopefully, with some common sense to be able to either farm or hunt or in most cases provide some kind of service to someone else such so that they are willing to provide us with certificates of appreciation, which we can then redeem for things that we need to sustain ourselves. So everything all here is because of the grace of God. Verse 22, "The sun ariseth, they gather themselves together and lay them down in their dens. Man goeth forth unto his work and to his labor until the evening. O Lord, how manifold are thy works, and wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches." And verse 24 here is a summary of everything that we've read from verse 23, from verse 3 to verse 23. Verse 24 here, "O Lord, how manifold are thy works. In wisdom hast thou made them all. The earth is full of thy riches." Everything that we've said from verse 3 to verse 23 can be boiled down to this statement that's made by the psalmist in verse 24. It is a recognition of how manifold the works of God are, that he has made them in his wisdom, and that because of that, the earth is full of his riches. And so he's talking about the earth here. He's talking about the land, the creatures that live on it. And then in verse 25, the psalmist transitions. He says, "So is this great and wide sea, wherein are things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts." Now it's interesting today because we're still finding out about things that live in the sea. There's still things down there that we don't know about. Still. And I don't care what anybody says, they still haven't figured out the octopus. They still haven't figured that thing out because it's unlike anything else that exists on the planet. And we talked about this after Sunday school very briefly. But, you take off an octopus's leg, it can regrow it. And not like some lizards where it regrows and it's weaker or smaller than what was lost before, but it's fully functional. It's as if it had never lost the leg. And these things they can change their color instinctively to match almost any pattern. You put an octopus on a checkerboard, it can hide itself on that checkerboard. And it just does it because of what God has blessed it with its abilities. And so they still haven't figured that thing out. And so think about all of the things that we don't know about that exist in the areas of the sea that we can't reach because of the water pressure. Because you try to send something down there, the water pressure crushes it. You can only go so deep and you can only send people so deep with cameras to be able to study it. Now, you can send certain vessels, certain highly specialized things down to the bottoms of certain trenches, but they can't explore the entire trench. And you only have a limited amount of power. If you send it down there with a battery, the battery's going to die eventually. If you send it down there, you can't send it down there, with, say it uses some kind of other explosive fuel, like gasoline or diesel fuel. It'll run out of fuel. It's got to have a way to make it back up. So it can't just indefinitely spend time down there gathering information. And so there are wide areas of the ocean. Just think about how big it is. There are extremely wide areas of the ocean that you can't just view like you can on land. Like we can use satellites and see just about anything on land other than what's covered by thick, overgrown treetops. The ocean is a place of extreme mystery, and so things creeping innumerable, both small and great beasts. There go the ships. There is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. Now, most of the time when we see the word Leviathan, I start a study into Job and into Revelation, and I talk about Satan, that old serpent, the dragon. I don't believe that's what's being referred to here. I believe here, when you see the word Leviathan, personally, that it's talking about some kind of gigantic whale that still exists today, whether it be the blue whale or whether it be a sperm whale or whether it be just any of those really large whales. It's a picture of just this great gigantic thing that's larger than us by multitudes of times over. And how God has created this, and it plays in the sea. It plays in the sea. And so, verse 27, "These wait all upon thee, that thou mayest give them their meat in due season. That thou givest them, they gather. Thou openest thine hand, they are filled with good." And so all of these creatures, in the sea, out of the sea, rely upon God. Verse 29, "Thou hidest thy face, they are troubled. Thou takest away their breath, they die and return to dust." I've said it again and again and again because I really like the illustration, and partially because I'm the one who thought of it. But God is in control, and He maintains the earth, and He keeps it from going out of control. And you can imagine like He's got His hand wrapped around it lovingly. And you see, when you read the book of Revelation, all of the judgments, all of the horrible natural disasters and the chaos that comes during that time period. And I don't believe that what that is God clenching the fist to tighten Himself around the earth and to tighten His control. I believe what's happening is He's loosening the grip. That He's letting the curse of sin take its natural course. He's letting things fall apart and decay and chaos to reign in that time. And He's letting go. And so I think that's what we're seeing here. Thou hidest thy face, they are troubled. You know, when God is removed from the situation, you know, there's a place that exists where God is not. We call that place hell. Now, I know that he's technically all places, all times, but nobody in hell has a connection to God. When hell is cast into the lake of fire to burn forever and ever, that's not going to be a place where God's mercy extends, where His grace extends. It will be as if He is not there. It will be separated from His person. And so, I don't want to play down hell as some people do in modern days today and try to make it and define hell as separation from God. That's what some people do to try to lessen the sting when talking to people. They don't want to believe what Jesus says about hell, what He says both in the Gospels and in His revelation to John. They don't want to believe it. That it is a place of eternal suffering. It is a place of eternal damnation, eternal fire, eternal suffering. So they have a hard time reconciling how a good and perfect God could create a place like that. And we're not going to go into and do a full study on hell this morning, but one of its characteristics is that it is separated from God. And thinking back to Jesus on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? When God had to turn His back on Him. The Father had to turn His back on the Son, couldn't look at Him because He'd taken on the sin of the world. That was truly the worst moment in Jesus' life. Because if you think, for all of His 33 years, He's had perfect fellowship with the Father. He's never been out of sync. He's never been out of step. They've always been walking right together because the Father has given Him the Holy Spirit. And at that time, He did not have that comfort. He did not have that connection. It was stripped away. And even in that time, He still did not falter. He still did not fail. He still remained true. He still remained sinless. And He still was able to be the perfect sacrifice for our sins. So we see that without God, things fall apart. Without God, things become unbearable. Now in verse 30, Thou sendest forth Thy Spirit, they are created, and Thou renewest the face of the earth. The glory of the Lord shall endure forever. The Lord shall rejoice in His works. And so we see the contrast between without God and with God. It's much better. He looketh on the earth, and it trembleth. He toucheth the hills, and they smoke. I will sing unto the Lord as long as I live. I will sing praise to my God while I have my being. Do we have that same attitude? That as long as I draw breath, I'll praise my God. That as long as I have my being, as long as I am me, I'm going to sing unto the Lord. My meditation of him shall be sweet. I will be glad in the Lord. And then we switch here. This whole psalm has been a psalm of praise, a psalm of recognition of God's glory. And I don't think that that's contradicted by this in verse 35. I don't think it's necessarily off theme. We see an imprecatory prayer here that's prayed. He says, "Let the sinners be consumed out of the earth, and let the wicked be no more." I don't believe, though, that that's a departure from praise and from recognition of God's glory. I believe that this is just, it's the logical expectation that you want to glorify God. You want him to be preeminent. You want him to be blessed. You want him to have glory. You want to bless him. And the logical conclusion of that would be for him to have his will, for him to establish his perfect kingdom so that his glory can be even more full. And so I don't think here that praying against sinners, praying against the wicked, is a departure from glorifying him. I think that's just the logical next step, is that you pray for the good things, you pray against sin. And they go right together. So, bless thou the Lord, O my soul. Praise ye the Lord. And that is Psalm 104. Are there any quick comments or questions this morning?